To unpack the real issues affecting the Tasman nations, this is Trans-Tasman Talk. Jointly produced by the Unshackled.net and rightminds.nz. Now here's Tim Willems in Australia and Dewey DeBoer in New Zealand.
Hello and welcome to another week of Trans-Tasman Talk. The date is Tuesday, the 29th of October 2019 at 7 p.m. here in Melbourne.
And it is 9 p.m. here in Auckland.
And we are live on the Unshackled YouTube channel, so please comment in the live chat, and also you can send us through super chats through the Unshackled main channel. So we will read out your comment on the show, and you'll also help keep this show running along with the rest of the Unshackled.
And we're also live on the Right Minds channel as well. Please join us there and subscribe. And hello to everyone just joining in now. It will be good to see you in the chat tonight.
Yes. Oh, it's the thing is we don't have a holding music like we do for my Wilmsfront program. So we did have just a blank screen for a little bit. People they don't get the alert right away on YouTube that we're live. So.
Exactly, it can be worth just hanging it there for a minute or two. I just see some people popping into the chat, so that's good. We're definitely getting the notifications out.
Why don't we start with some? Oh well, I'd still call it news, but not sort of major with long-lasting ramifications. New Zealand got knocked out of the Rugby Union World Cup, which is being held over in Japan, beaten by England. So I think the only thing that you can win over the next 4 years, a world championship, is netball. But maybe it was.
Yeah, there's a few more than that. Tim, we have some shooting sports as well. What's left of them? You know, we have top claybird shooting champions. We also have the top women's weightlifting champ in the world as well. You know, happens to be a man, but we still do hold the record for best women's weightlifting there. And yes, it's very, very, very tragic that New Zealand is now no longer in the running for another consecutive Rugby World Cup title. I've heard that we're all hoping Wales will win now, so that seems to be the team to watch, apparently. Or did they not make it either?
You're playing Wales in the bronze or third place runoff, so it's England and South Africa.
Yeah, that's
final.
Right. So that's why I heard people say the day after New Zealand lost it, I thought, at least we're going rooting for Wales now, but that's not how it worked out. Yeah.
Well,
it's a tough one there.
Yeah, we can still take satisfaction as Australians that New Zealand didn't win it. There's still all these conspiracy theories because the CEO of Rugby Australia, Raylene Castle, is a Kiwi, and of course she terminated Israel Folau's contract. That's still going before the courts in an unfair dismissal case. So a lot of people think that she's a Kiwi agent because she's still, even because the coach has now quit of the Wallabies, and there's going to be a post mortem, but she said no, we've made all the right decisions during my time. So there's
I already saw she had already blamed Israel Folau for putting himself before the team and costing them the win. So yes, I'm seeing people in the chat saying we have to root for South Africa now. I was going to say that is the obvious solution here, is where everyone's hoping South Africa will now win, and the bronze needs to go to New Zealand. But I've heard that people here are not so interested in third place, apparently.
Well, the whites of South Africa, they've got to have something go their way.
Yeah, and the item I saw today was a petition to get TVNZ to stream the third place match. Apparently, it was not even going to be streamed by some of the agencies here because it was just a third place match. But they really should be following that. If we're supporting the All Blacks, even third place should be something that we should be cheering them on for.
Well, yes, if you can't win the main thing, then that's the thing with the Olympics. It's actually worse to come fourth because then you get nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I do think the bronze is worth something. But we will see. We will have to wait and see what ends up. We've got that match coming up before the next show, so we can always revisit this topic then.
And just a bit of a summer alert, there was a shark attack on the Whitsundays in the central to north Queensland holidays hotspot. 2 tourists were attacked. One, I think, lost some of their toes. So it's, shark season is here. But we must not kill the sharks because they're the traditional custodians of the sea, and we're aggressors by going into their territory. That's what we're told.
We also had a similar attack here in New Zealand today. Apparently, a seal was attacked by a human with a flare gun. We don't have the full reports on if the seal was the aggressor or not, or so, but there are a lot of people very upset that somebody may have used a flare gun in self-defense against a seal. That's obviously a big no-no.
Yes, of course, it's always not humans' fault. It's white humans' fault.
They look a little bit too much like the silvery fish that swim in the ocean.
Because there was a police officer in South Australia. He horrifically killed a wombat, but said that because he was Aboriginal, that it was part of his culture.
I did see the video of the rock throwing there. Yes, apparently that's a traditional thing to do.
Yes, but it sort of made a lot of people's heads explode. It's like animal cruelty, but it's tradition.
Yes, that's a tough one. And speaking of having to have people's heads explode, I've got an update on the anti-terrorism bill that the Greens were not supporting last week. I just want to clarify that they are supporting it this week, because apparently now it's been diluted to a sufficient extent where the Greens are happy to swallow that one, because the Labour was threatening to run a deal with the National Party to make it stricter, and then the Greens were like, okay, we'll take the fall on this one here.
Nice manoeuvring there by Ardern and the rest.
Yes, either a genius move there. I don't know. It's at this point I don't know whether it's going to be good for anything or whether any of the ISIS members will make it back. Of course, the big al-Baghdadi has been killed earlier this week, and so good riddance to him. And everyone hopefully will have seen the photo of the dog, that probably a German Shepherd, that helped to hunt him down.
Have you seen the Babylon Bee article that they've uncovered that this dog sniffed a lot of butts in college?
I did see that headline. Yes, that's. At this point, it's hard to tell what's satire and what isn't.
That's why the Babylon Bee is so Snopes go after it now, because it's so close to reality. Of course, it's a satire website, but a lot of their articles are actually unintentionally true.
And because of that, the founder of the Babylon Bee has actually quit last month. He's actually founded a real news website because he said he could no longer write satire. So he's actually moved on to write real news because he can just write the same thing and it's still legit.
I think the most factually accurate article that was put out by the Babylon Bee is that traditional Christian library just has books, no child drag queens. Which is true.
It is absolutely true. So I've just come back from the Labor weekend holiday that we had here, which is why I was actually a little bit tuned out of the news, and I missed out initially on some of the fun developments, because we have so Monday is Labor Day, that was yesterday here, and it was a nice long weekend, and it is we've had it obviously for a very long time, and we've only in more recent decades, it's now a long time ago as well, it was introduced by a Labour government, a proper national holiday that was initially called New Zealand Day, and later became Waitangi Day. And when Norman Kirk was introducing this bill, he said, we already have Labour Day, so the opposition might like a national day. And you've got a national day over there in Australia as well, and I believe your Australia Day is just as controversial as our New Zealand /Waitangi Day. but for very different reasons.
Before I get into that, because you just mentioned that Baghdadi is now Baghdadi, we had one of our most vile Australians die. Ivan Milat, the backpacker serial killer. He died in prison, age 74. He never confessed to killing and murdering those 7 backpackers. This was in the late 80s and early 90s, so it was a good week for dying scum. I hope there's more to come. But
I'll drink to that.
Yes, but obviously he was not good for Australian tourism during that time because, of course, we have a lot of backpackers who will still come into major cities, backpacker hostels. They're a roaring trade in all our major cities, and of course, Ivan Milat still lives on in fiction. I'm not sure if you've seen the Wolf Creek movies with Mick Taylor in the Australian outback. He runs into foreign tourists and takes them back to his property and watch the movies to find out what happens next.
I don't think there's any big spoilers there.
Yes, Mick Taylor, he's taken on a life of his own.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, thankfully he's only a fiction, while the real scumbag Ivan Milat is dead, and good riddance. But yes, going on to Australia Day 2020. So it's the left have promoted it over the past. Well, it's gained prominence over the past 5 years for being Invasion Day because apparently it was an invasion when the British came to colonize it. But invasion, it implies that there was some sort of war, that when they arrived at Botany Bay, Governor Arthur Phillip, that there was some sort of they got off the ship with guns and started shooting the local Aborigines, which, like, obviously there were conflicts throughout colonial Australia, but there was also periods of negotiation and friendship. So there was never a war, but there was never, like what you have, a formal treaty, because there was no one Aboriginal people. There was separation of tribes. But
Exactly.
the city
I correct you on that, though, because the New Zealand Maori were all completely separate tribes as well, but they started to form together into more cohesive groups over time.
Melbourne was the city of Melbourne, where I live. It was legally acquired from the local Aborigines. John Batman, as founder of Melbourne, though apparently the contemporary history is that he ripped them off. That it was an unfair trade. I love how over 200 years ago the modern academics think they know better than John Batman and the local Aboriginals back then.
That's often the case of, talking down to the people that they deem to be less intelligent, and to say, they didn't know they couldn't spot a good deal when they saw one, and so on. And you need to remember, obviously, just like in Australia, here in New Zealand, a lot of the land was, essentially unused wasteland, undeveloped, nothing there. And the settlers were the ones who did the hard yards on, cultivating a lot of this area. And same thing with the big protests we have sort of down the road from me, basically at Imahato, is the land was supposedly confiscated from the tribe when they joined the rebellion in the Waikato, but the land itself was actually developed by both European and Maori groups, and it was actually initially basically a swamp, and they cultivated this land together over time.
Because the welcome to country, which we have now at public events, they always say that sovereignty was never ceded, but it was in Melbourne. Sovereignty was ceded to John Batman. So the owners of Melbourne are actually the white people, because he bought it.
Exactly, and most of the New Zealand transactions went like that as well. And there were a few, wars and scuffles and confiscations that went on. But that's what's happened all over the world. No matter where you go, somebody has invaded somebody else's piece of land. I think the overall process in New Zealand has smoothed over pretty well. We have these small bits flare up every now and then, But I think the general vibe is that people overall are actually happy with the way that everything has now been settled and negotiated.
Well, most Australians, like both white and other races, and of course, there's more Indigenous Australians these days because of race mixing, and most, as the expression goes, quite Australians just get on with living their lives. It's of course the anointed elders and the academics in the universities who claim that there's still this simmering tension between white and black Australia, and are responsible for sowing a lot of the seeds of discontent. And the reason that there's still a lot of poverty and crime in remote Indigenous communities is because they're taught not to be responsible. It's not your fault for acting that way. It's the intergenerational trauma of colonialism. So you better be angry at the white man for making you this way.
And that's kind of hatred and simmers and seethes in academia in New Zealand as well, and also in the media. We've got a 7-part series that's just been released by the New Zealand Herald called Land of the Long White Cloud. I think the word white there is the focus, and basically it's an interview series of interviews, a lengthy series of articles and video clips that I believe were produced in conjunction with NZ On Air, which basically means it's taxpayer funded, and is all about getting these basically first year gender studies university students to talk about their white guilt and what they're doing to remove their white guilt. By either talking about it and having these sessions where they sit down and talk about all of the guilt that they have, or they go around plastering, posters up on wherever they plaster these posters now, I suppose, on power poles and on walls around the campus, and trying to support the Indigenous people and their protests and so on, and it just boggles my mind how bizarre this is, that they're like, you didn't do this, your parents didn't do, your parents weren't involved here, your grandparents weren't involved, at best your great grandparents were maybe the original settlers who came here, who may have had some altercations with local Maori, and they're sitting here 19 years old in university, trying to find a way to, get rid of all of this guilt that they have for things that they've never done.
Aren't we always told that nepotism and people inheriting things is... The left used to teach us that was bad, that you shouldn't be entitled to something that you didn't earn. But both those young people of Aboriginal descent today and young people of European descent like us... we both were born in the same land. We never experienced any of this that happened even 50, 100, 200 years ago. So why, just because one Australian or New Zealander happens to be born a different race, why do they have more of a claim, even though they're both born at the same time?
And even in New Zealand, we have nearly 30% of people here, like myself, were born overseas. And so, if a third of the country is supposed to feel guilty for things that happened in the country when they weren't there, that's setting up a very tall order that will never be fulfilled. And so the media and academia and, these poor social justice warriors are trying to make this a thing, but it's not going to be a thing.
What's happened with our Invasion Day protests? It's interesting that the big ones, they happen in the inner cities. The biggest one, of course, is in Melbourne. The Alice Springs, which is probably the most well-known Aboriginal populated town in Australia, they don't have Invasion Day protests, which is interesting to note. But it's gone from now change the date to abolish the date because Australia is so bad and evil that we don't even deserve to have a day to celebrate Australia. And of course, then there are the radical Marxists and Trotskyists and anarchists who say abolish Australia. So it's gone from change the date, abolish Australia Day, to abolish Australia, that our nation is so broken it just shouldn't exist.
And what can these councils, because some of these radical Trotskyists, they do control some of your local areas, I'm sure, some of the states perhaps even. What can they actually do to get rid of Australia Day, or what is their plan?
Well, local councils in Australia, they conduct citizenship ceremonies for new Australians, and the most popular date for people to become new Australians is, of course, Australia Day. But the federal government grants local governments the power to conduct these citizenship ceremonies because, of course, only the Australian government has the authority to make you an Australian citizen. And so there were 3 local councils in Melbourne: Yarra Council, Moreland and Darebin. They all decided to not have to remove their Australia Day celebrations for that day, and 2 of them, Darebin and Yarra, they got their power to hold citizenship ceremonies on that day stripped. To my knowledge, it was only Moreland Council that still retained the power. But now the federal government has said if you don't hold citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day, then you won't get the power at all. You won't be able to do it at all. They'll completely remove the power. And of course, this is a good bit of strong arming from the federal government, which I don't mind. So it's one of the other inner city councils, Port Phillip Council. They've gotten around this. They're going to have on Australia Day a day of mourning in the morning, and then they're going to have their Australia Day festivities later in the day. This was overseen by, or this decision was assisted by the local mayor there, Dick Gross. I'll just pop his picture up on the screen. That's who's governing Port Phillip, which takes in St Kilda Beach. You'll remember that St Kilda Beach was one of the local crime hotspots last summer. They've got
the African gangs. Was that
yes,
St Kilda Beach, right?
Yes, and they've also got a permanent outside alcohol ban in the Port Phillip area now, which is another thing to.
I'm sure there are. The street is littered with empty beer bottles now.
Well, it's really hard to get to St Kilda by public transport, so. And get there by car as well, so I never venture there anyway.
I've got a good comment here for you, which you talked about last week, where somebody says Australia is so big, just cut the country in half communist and half capitalist. I believe you've referred to the Western secessionist movement in Australia in the past.
Well, somebody shared to the Unshackled page, there is a proposal to completely split Australia in two, the Commonwealth of Capricornia, which Queensland, Northern Territory and Western Australia would become the nation of Capricornia, while the rest would become Australia, because Queensland and Western Australia are seen as the more conservative nationalist states, so they can
or as the left see them, and the evil states that need to be pushed off into the ocean.
Yes, they wanted to cut Queensland off from Australia at after the last federal election, because all those seats are swung to the coalition, because they wanted mining jobs in central Queensland. The local left in Melbourne this week, they're blockading a mining conference which is taking place at the Melbourne Exhibition and Convention Centre. There are around about 40 arrests today because they're not being as extreme this time as Rebellion Week. Like, there's no supergluing, but they are blocking the entrance to the conference, which is a scale back from them. They're not supergluing themselves to the road, but you still can't block people entering a building which they have a ticket to go and attend something. So police pushed them back today. And it was interesting, a few of them kicked police horses and so arrested for animal cruelty. I thought that they wanted to, they didn't like the mistreatment of animals, these
Yeah, but these
Marxists.
are right-wing animals.
Well, it's animals and animals. Would they kick a Melbourne Cup horse? I don't think so.
No, but those are oppressed. You know, the Melbourne Cup horses are victims, and the police horses are willing, they're willing accomplices in the subjugation of the protesters.
Yes, evil right-wing horses and dogs this week. They're traitors to the animal kingdom.
Absolutely, they are. Oh yes, I'm sure.
Oh, and sniffer dogs at music festivals. I forgot them. They're evil animal traitors as well.
Yeah, and at the airports, the drug dogs.
Mm.
Now, last week, I was at a friend's place, and he showed me the view from his house, and he pointed out, the local mountain, and there were no trees on top of that mountain, and apparently because they were all not native trees, they were introduced trees, and we have a local authority here that basically is a elitist Maori group that has control over all of the mountaintops that they can claim as sacred sites. They decided to cut all the trees down without consulting anybody in the area, so they can eventually replace them with natives. Now, and we've had a mountain top in the city closed as well, Mount Eden. No more cars are allowed on the mountain. Now, apparently, I've been hearing that Australia has been having a similar problem with your little mountains and rocks being, closed to the public.
Yes, Ayers Rock is now closed for climbing. You get a $10,000 fine now for attempting to climb. So this is by the now owners of Ayers Rock, because Australian Prime Minister Bob Hawke in 1985, he gifted the rock to the Parajuri Aborigines, and so now they have brought this climbing ban in, because apparently it's an area of spiritual, cultural significance, so it's insensitive to climb it. But it's basically, it seems to be another case that this recreational activity, it's banned basically so that they can tell the whites off, because there's been a huge last minute clamour to climb the rock before it's banned forever, and everyone's been noticing that they're all white people, these insensitive white privileged people who are climbing the rock. How dare they?
You mentioned that actually many months ago now. I've read some articles in like a wilderness magazine here. Why only Europeans are basically climbing mountains and doing walks, and it's quite an interesting thing. So it's due to cultural differences. Actually, is mostly European people who do all of this mountain climbing and mountaineering, and it's starting to be picked up by other groups as well. But that's actually the reason why you see, they seem to have accurately picked out that it's generally white people, because it's actually a very strong cultural thing to go out there and climb things.
What did you and I used to do as children? We like to climb trees and have make like a makeshift cubby house in the local tree. I mean, it's natural or at least for people that we grew up with, to want to climb things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but they're banning climbing things too. By the way, I don't know if if you've seen any preschools or schools lately, but climbing trees is too dangerous.
Now, this apparently it's a sacred site now, but one of the traditional custodians of Ayers Rock, Paddy Uluru, said that if people are stupid enough to climb the rock, they should be able to do it. And the reason why he said stupid enough, because it is a physically demanding climb. It's not just you walk up there and you can jump around. It's really draining, because Pauline Hanson, the One Nation Party leader, she climbed the rock. She had a current affair, one of our local tabloid shows following her, and Pauline Hanson's in her mid-60s now, and so she really struggled, and there's chain now to keep you safe. And one of the local patriots, Neil Erickson, he also went up to Ayers Rock to climb it one last time. So did our senior producer Morgan Ronroe, and yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a challenge. And like certainly, like if you were, you're not climbing it to be an arsehole, because it's you want to see, like, because you want to see the top of a huge monument to see all of the landscape around, like you'd climb a mountain, but it's also the challenge as well. It's an accomplishment. Like what's the famous
Sir Edmund Hillary? Is that where we're going?
No, I was talking about the bungee drop in New Zealand. What's the famous one there?
Well, I know we do a Sky Tower one and a Harbour Bridge one here in Auckland. Are those the ones you're thinking of, or are you thinking of a steep rock?
No, there's a famous bungee jump where you jump off and it's water underneath. A lot of Australians do it when they go over to New Zealand.
Auckland? Like,
no, not in Auckland. No, it's somewhere else in New Zealand. You don't know?
I actually have not heard of any other ones. If anybody in the chat comes up with it in the next 2 minutes, I will let you know. Skipper's Canyon?
Maybe, yes.
That's yes, someone else is saying we have many.
Okay. It's always in Tourism New Zealand ads in Australia, the bungee jump. Mm-hmm. And so it's a natural thing of like tourists wanting to climb things or jump off things, because there's also the daredevil aspect as well, the adrenaline rush.
Very good. Yeah, I've just, someone's confirming it. Yeah, it is the one in Queenstown. So it's
yes,
it's
that's
a good
right.
Yeah, it's a good skiing location as well over there.
Yeah, so that's why people want to climb Ayers Rock. I mean, I can't climb it now, but it's if I was still able to, it'd certainly be something that was on my bucket list to say, yes, I did do that physically demanding and draining climbing. And obviously you want to see the top for yourself. Mm-hmm. But yes, yeah, like I said, it's just another by the new Aboriginal elders and academics to say that because it's something that white people enjoy, which is part of the Australian landscape, that no, it's you have to feel shame about it, because there's been signs up there for years saying, "Oh, do not climb this, otherwise you're being insensitive."
Mm-hmm. And I've had conversations with many people, especially who are, they're disappointed that it are these these elites who have been referred to by Don Brash as the pale-faced tribal elite, and usually they do indeed look very pale. And they're the ones who dictate all of these decisions, and actually most of the common people don't really get a say, and these decisions are not necessarily a reflection of what the majority or even a democratic outcome would be.
Well, you can say that, but I'm an Australian, so I can't comment on what you've just said. But a lot of people have made the point that how come, like, basically there's a nation within a nation now, that Ayers Rock, it's basically a separate nation now, where the owners of that can dictate the policies of that, where Ayers Rock, it wasn't built by anybody, because the argument is, you wouldn't climb a war memorial or a church or you actually can climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge. That's the thing, but it's a natural formation.
Churches often are built to be climbed as well. I've climbed many churches. The comment I was making before was in relation to similar events like this in New Zealand. I obviously can't comment about the Australian situation either. There is an argument here to be made from private property to say, well, if the government handed it to this tribe and they are now the holders of this, and it's now their private property, then they can do with it what they like. But of course, the question is, or is it their private property? Is it still falling under a national park, and they have some kind of symbolic ownership and some kind of symbolic decision making over it? Was it right for the government?
Well, it's jointly managed by the local tribe and a park authority.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not truly private. It's not genuinely private property.
But that's why I said Bob Hawke gifted it to them, because it's not every day that a government says to a group of people, "Hey, here you can have this huge swag of land that's yours."
Yeah, but they don't have the money to manage it, and that's there's a lot, and so the parks are managed by public funds. and therefore the public should have as much access as is reasonably possible to it. Same thing with the New Zealand national parks. I like to walk in those. You've got the official trails, but you actually have the right to go off the trail and to walk wherever you like in the national parks here. I suppose it's similar in Australia generally, if people who are into hiking and tramping would know that. As long as you're respectful and you leave the area as you found it, then that's perfectly acceptable.
That's what I was talking about before, that are we all part of Australia? Are we all Australians, or is there separate classes?
And that's what you inevitably end up with if you go down this road. And that's what we are doing in both of our nations to an extent. And we'll see if there's going to be sufficient pushback against that, because I do think it would be a real shame to see, essentially internally an erosion of sovereignty where these small groups of bureaucrats or tribal elders who are not really that accountable to very many people can make decisions for the rest of us, and they're still getting our money, they're still getting public funds to maintain all of these areas.
I want to talk now briefly about Professor Marsha Langton AM. She is an academic at Melbourne University, oversees various Indigenous studies. She said that the final climbers on Ayers Rock, they'll be cursed. Now, she actually wasn't... obviously, when you hear the word like Aboriginal academic based in the city, a lot of people have already made up their minds. But she actually made some good statements in the past. Like, she talked about she reserved most of her criticisms for the Greens, and basically said their policy of preserving the remote Indigenous communities the way they are. They basically want the people in them to be poor and drunk forever. That's the word she used. And she also criticised the Greens for co-opting the native title movement so they could block local mining developments, which a lot of elder custodians, they actually want mining developments because they want to get the royalties. But of course the Greens and the other lefts, they try to co-opt, and their anti-development position, they say, oh, it's not just based on our environmental beliefs. It's, look, you're being offensive to the First Nations people. So she's called them out on it, but she basically accuses everyone now of racism. She's Andrew Bolt put up a list of all the even like left-wing people she's accused of being racist. And the most absurd thing she said lately is when there was a gay conservative who she disagreed with claimed that he was only gay because he masturbated too much, which was an interesting one. I didn't know that was the cause of homosexuality.
I'm sure you can say anything you like if you rank high enough up the scale of special people.
But yes, she sort of, that's how sort of far she's degenerated over the past few years, which, if she's one of the sort of, like, she was one of the better ones, and so that's why it's a real shame.
We have had a few other developments here in New Zealand in terms of politicians backtracking and looking embarrassed. I'm sure you've got a fair share of those in Australia. I'll start up with a follow-up from last week on the emissions trading scheme and the zero carbon bill for Parliament at the moment. James Shaw has been left looking silly again because Jacinda has now officially excluded farmers from the ETS. So we'll be going zero carbon neutral, except farmers will be exempt. So that's about 90% of our CO2 emissions that exempt right there. So it's going to be really easy for us to get to zero now. But she has placated them a little bit by giving them a climate fund that used to have $2 million in it, and it's now going up to $15 million that they give away overseas so they can combat climate change overseas. I'm not sure what that gets spent on. We know that it won't be spent on any climate-related things because there aren't any, there's no climate change happening up anywhere that's negatively affecting anybody. But anyway, the Greens get, $13 million as a bribe in return for, staying on board with the carbon bill. I think that's a good enough, that's an okay price to pay. I'm actually not too upset about that.
As I said to you last week, at least the farmers are getting some influence in New Zealand. While we're still debating in Australia what should be the federal government and state government's response to the drought. And it's good to see that some farmers have banded together now to sue the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, which has been flushing out the water to sea in the environmental flows, which the Liberal and National parties have been complicit in upholding. And the National Farmers Federation has basically put up the white flag and said, oh, we've got to try and assist farmers leaving the land. And there's been an exodus from the farmlands in Australia for the past 25 years, and you sort of think, well, what's going to be left?
And especially, we both have economies that rely very heavily on primary industries, and they need to remain strong. And on the subject of primary industries and the Green Party, the poor Greens have been left holding the bag again on a new forestry deal. So Winston Peters has managed to get a Japanese company exempt from having to go through the Overseas Investment Office to buy farmland. So the government is selling farmland at record rates to foreign companies now, and they're hoping to meet their tree planting goal. They're supposed to plant 1 billion trees. And they were going to get Shane Jones's cousins off the couch to plant those trees. But they've really struggled there. They failed. The number of people on the dole is going up. The people on assistance benefits is going up and up and up. So they can't get the cousins off the couch. And they're going to get the Japanese in to plant the trees for us instead, so we can get to the 1 billion trees. But that's led to some huge resentment in the Green Party, because they've been opposed to this all along, and they're the ones holding this portfolio and kind of being run around. So Eugene Sage was the minister for this, and she's basically has to defend the fact that she's selling prime forest land to foreign companies.
But a tree is a tree to a greenie, shouldn't it?
Yeah, but it's like I said before, it's got to be the right kind of tree. And I think there's as long as it's a native, and ideally it's got to be planted by a native as well, and then you've got the best kind of tree to be the most environmentally friendly that it can be. Well, and that's how it works. It's science. There's a consensus behind this.
The latest demand of the climate lobby in Australia is that that not only should we reach our own emissions target, but when deciding to approve new coal projects, we should consider overseas nations their emissions as well, because it used to be that if we're shipping the coal overseas, then it's not our emissions. But no, there's got to be that loophole's got to be cracked down on now.
Yeah, but they can't do that, else the clean green countries like Norway and so on will become some of the largest CO2 emitters in the world, and that would just be terrible.
Now we're both going.
The Greens will never sign up on that. It's not gonna happen.
We're both going through fresh rounds of national security legislations. Of course, in New Zealand, it all stems from the Christchurch mosque massacre back in March. You call them the Tarrant bills. There's a gun one, and then there's an internet censorship one.
Yes, we have the second gun bill that basically aims to bring us even more in line with Australia. It's going to make our firearms legislation line up with the UN. So there's this non-binding United Nations treaty that we signed 20 or 30 years ago. That is now suddenly, our legislation is being changed to bring us into line with that legislation that they keep saying won't affect our sovereignty at all and won't affect the way that things happen in this country. They're obviously lying when they say that, because the facts bear it out time and time again. They will change the legislation to line up with the United Nations treaties. There's supposed to be a gun register brought in. They're going to bring the licensing period down from 10 years to 5 years. They're giving broad powers to the police to exclude anyone to say that they're not fit and proper to own a firearm if they, show a tendency to or exhibit signs of anything from hate to extremism, these lovely vague terms that can be used to disqualify people from firearms ownership. But they've been holding some of these hearings now, and they've slowed this bill down a little bit, and the emotions have worn off a little bit. And there were some great moments in the hearing last week where the police association spokesman was grilled quite heavily by the committee. He was called out for using hyperbolic language, for saying, that, guns are on the streets and we're being harassed by, these firearms owners, and the gun lobby is getting overseas funds and the gun lobby is so powerful, which is not true in New Zealand. We have, a very small grassroots, gun lobby, if we may call them that, and the police association was called out for that in front of Parliament. There was a group that's been formed post-March called Gun Control NZ, and there's a lot of Australian influence on these committees, by the way.
Yes, because Gun Control Australia is probably as the name suggests, the nation's preeminent gun control group, and they've been called out over the years, telling some whoppers, Gun Control Australia, about the availability and licensing of firearms in Australia.
And it was just quite funny to have them called out when they were put behind the microphone and MPs were asking them questions. The lady there basically completely had, melted. Well, she didn't have a meltdown, but she was on the verge of having a meltdown. Being questioned about her stats, she basically said, we need to reduce the licensing period to like every 3 years, and we need to have tougher controls on people under the age of 30 because then they're vulnerable. We need to ban children under the age of 12 from even touching a firearm, and we need to check up on people over the age of 50 because they might get, dementia or whatever. They might, suffer from some kind of disease. And also there aren't very many women in firearms ownership. So basically and also there aren't very many minorities in firearms ownership as well, something like that. So basically, if you're young, if you're old, if you're a woman, if you're married, finding all of the different groups to insult at the same time, and she was torn to shreds by the select committee, which doesn't happen very often.
They haven't lobbied yet that you have to have had sex to get a firearm licenses, because you don't want virgin incels having firearms.
That's right. Yeah. Well, she didn't quite say that, but I think she was very close to that because she wanted to push that up. Over 30. She thought maybe that'll give them some more time. But that's where it will go next. That's where it will go next. And one of the very telling moments was actually at the end of the that's committee session. They had the I think the Federation of Islamic Association of New Zealand on. And the spokesman there, or the two guys, and they were actually quite good. They were obviously saying they were happy to see all of this gun control and so on, and they had been negatively impacted. But they had said they've been running their own investigation and inquiries, and they believe that they have evidence that will be revealed in the coming months that the police actually did not vet Brendan Tarrant properly, and that he should never have been given a license to begin with. So there are. If something like that comes up with real evidence, I think that will sink any further gun legislation that tries to come out, because that will put the blame fairly on the police, and that this was not a failure of our law, this was a failure of the implementation from the police, and I think that will really change the dynamic here. And it's interesting, at least it's comforting to see that even the Islamic Association is happy to pursue that angle, to say, hey, look, we need to look at the processes that failed, specifically what the police were doing.
And I would hope those Islamic groups would realize that, well, obviously they're quite concerned about security at mosques. What's the best way to have security at a mosque?
And that's what I would hope for as well, but that's not been the case. But that would be a strong case to say, hey, look, we do need more firearms ownership. We should have some kind of concealed carry licensing, but that's not any movement anywhere in New Zealand. I'm one of the few people who advocates for that. But that's the best way to defend a mosque or a church or a synagogue is if you have somebody with a gun on the inside. Nobody's going to be shooting that place up.
Now, in Australia, we've been going through another round of national security law proposals. Now, they want to... the government has proposed having a national facial recognition database, but the Joint Committee on Security and Intelligence in the Parliament, which is a bipartisan, as its name suggests, has members of both the government in the House and the opposition in the Senate. There's no minor parties in it. It's chaired by Liberal backbencher Andrew Hastie, and most high-ranking Labor member of that committee is Mark Dreyfus, who's the Shadow Attorney General. The committee unanimously said that these laws need to be redrafted because basically it would allow for people's faces to be tracked nationwide. And the problem with, even though it's sold as it's only going to be the national security agencies within the Home Affairs Department that's going to have access to it, as we found with the metadata retention laws, which were introduced during the Abbott government in 2014, that they're accessed by a whole bunch of other government agencies like tax office and people who want to investigate what you've been up to. And so this would be the same, that sort of if you've been slipping up in something to do with this agency monitors. And this has been the problem, not the actual Home Affairs Department itself. Although they did come up with what I thought was a really bizarre submission to an inquiry regarding facial recognition software, is that they want it installed on computers and browsers so that if Australians want to access porn, they have to have facial recognition. Apparently the face, I'm not sure if the face can tell if you're over 18 or that's going to be a form of ID that the computer is going to basically log that, yeah, this person's accessing porn.
And this sounds very similar to the story about the Chinese government implementing facial recognition to access the internet.
Yes.
That parallel.
And the social credit system, because if these agencies, like, they're obviously wanting to see if you're slipping up in some aspect of your life, so they can say, hi, you said on this form that you were doing this when you're doing that. That's and so it's obviously the Australian government agencies, they're massively decentralized along federal, state, and even local lines. Even local government, they want to get access to this information on people. So it's not necessarily, in Australia we don't have a big brother, we have a whole network of small brothers who sort of share information with each other. Yeah. Or little brothers, I should say.
That's it. little brothers. Oh, that's, yeah. And as you said, that's just a proposal at this point. Hopefully it will be scuttled. But if somebody has the idea, it's only a decade or two away before they, they try again until they get what they're after. And soon enough, they'll be able to point to the success of the Chinese government, and will be, they'll be implementing it behind your back before you know it.
Well, the government, they still have to, they don't have to take the recommendations of the joint committee. It was widely reported that this was the first time since 2002 this committee had knocked back legislation, but it is going to be redrafted. So we hope that there's going to be proper safeguards in place, that it's not a 24/7 tracker of Australian citizens. So hopefully everyone's memory is long enough to know when this legislation is redrafted, to have a second look at it. We have Oh, you go.
I've got slightly related, I think, and going back to the politicians' embarrassments, but we have our police minister has actually been revealed to be breaking the law himself. And this ties into, the government monitoring everything that you're doing, and also trying to bring in the firearms legislation, because he's the big push behind that, and the registration, and penalties if you don't register, and so on. He has been found to be driving illegally on 2 accounts. He had an expired warrant of fitness, so his car was not road legal. And he also has not been paying his road user charges to the New Zealand Transport Agency for at least 2 months, although he did apparently pay up 5 minutes after the media rang him to tell him that he hadn't paid up. And I'm sure he got his warrant of fitness done very quickly as well. So the police minister is not able to follow the laws when it comes to driving. And yet he wants to be able to, register your firearms and keep track of those. And then, in a similar related story, we have had James Comey has announced in an interview that if Trump is re-elected, he will be moving to New Zealand, and that is to escape, obviously, prosecution for his many crimes. And Patrick Gower, everybody's favorite comedian, has announced that he would like to make James Comey the police commissioner. So we have to bring in some more foreign globalists to go and run the police, and be involved in the next rounds of legislation, more laws, more control. These same people running the show.
As Comey, does he not know about the ANZUS Treaty or the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance? You're not exactly going to escape extradition from New Zealand to the United States.
I don't think he's genuinely worried about the extradition thing. That's more my wishful thinking. But it's the same Trump derangement syndrome that was going on in 2016, where all of the celebrities said they would leave New Zealand. Leave for New Zealand. And James Comey, he was obviously still running the, I'm gonna say CIA. Was it CIA? No.
FBI.
FBI, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he was running the FBI at the time. And so he wouldn't have said that. But now that he's like celebrity status, he's got to join to the, I'm moving to New Zealand crowd.
A lot of Australians pledged that they would move to New Zealand after Scott Morrison got re-elected, because, of course, Jacinda Ardern is the model prime minister. Of course, they didn't move. Like the American celebrities, they didn't move to Canada.
Mm-hmm. I think we should still get some stricter immigration laws just in case, though. That's the one extra laws maybe we can openly support here.
Well, we need more border control between Australia and New Zealand, because we keep having to deport New Zealand criminals back.
Well, hopefully, as I said, hopefully we'll be doing that tit for tat and start to deport some Australian criminals as well.
Speaking of embarrassing politicians, our energy minister Angus Taylor he's found himself a quite red face this week, because back in September his office sent to the Daily Telegraph, which is Sydney's Murdoch paper, the 2017-18 City of Sydney annual report, because the Lord Mayor there, Clover Moore, who everyone hates because was climate crusader, and she wastes all of this money on green things and art things, a lot of waste of ratepayers' money. Apparently, the City of Sydney had spent $14.2 million on domestic travel and $1.7 million on international travel. And so Angus Taylor sent this to the Daily Telegraph, that this was the City of Sydney annual report, and the Daily Telegraph published it. He sent a letter to Clover Moore asking her to explain this absurd number, and the Daily Telegraph asked her explain, and she said this was wrong, but it was published anyway in the Daily Telegraph. The Guardian last week revealed, Guardian Australia, that this report, which it had been on the City of Sydney website since November 2018, because it was 2017-18 annual report, the metadata showed that those figures that were in the Daily Telegraph report given to Angus Taylor were never in that report and had been doctored across the line. So this is the original version. So the actual interstate visits was 4,200, and overseas was 1,700. But if you look at the doctored one there, it says 14.2. It doesn't say 14.2 million here. It says 14.2 and then 1.7. Like, it looks really weird. So how do you conclude from that it means million? And so Angus Taylor has said in Parliament last week that it was his office downloaded it from the City of Sydney website, which never had this altered version. He says that he didn't alter it, and he's apologised to Clover Moore for handing false information to the Daily Telegraph. But the question is, who done it? And in this situation, they normally throw low-level staffer under the bus to take responsibility for it. That's what happened when Michaela Cash's office was revealed to have tipped off the media about a raid on a union office. One of her staffers confessed to that, and he quit. But yes, it's the fact that it was believed this absurd amount, and how did this happen? Like, given that it was publicly available all this time, like how was this allowed to be circulated and reported it? And the Federal Labor Party, they've vowed to call in the New South Wales Police because it's against the law to alter a government document, which of course nothing's going to happen. But of course Angus Taylor looks stupid for basically passing this on.
Yeah, and the metadata, if I understand that correctly, was the metadata didn't necessarily point to any tampering, right? So
no, that
November,
so
likely.
Yeah, November 2018. That was the original report, and Angus Taylor, he's already been in the public firing line because there was his Department of the Environment was investigating a company which was owned by his family, Jamland, for illegal land clearing, and there's a lot of people are still accusing him of intervening with that. He maintains that he excused himself from the investigation. There's no evidence that he intervened, but that he failed to declare his family's interest in a timely manner. So he's it's just he's done a few sloppy things, Angus Taylor.
What
but
party was he from again?
He's from the Liberal Party. He's from rural New South Wales. He's no dunce. He was a Rhodes Scholar, but because he is he's a conservative Liberal MP. Of course, he's a high profile
scrutiny.
But it's just he's just done these stupid things. That's. None of this is this is not in terms of the most scandalous things that governments do. I mean, some random person altering a local government expenditure document along the line is not really in the grand scheme of things the hanging offence.
Mm-hmm. And at the media, we wouldn't double check a public document before running with it. That's par for the course, though.
Yeah, it was public. Like, you could just Google it.
Yeah, exactly. Bizarre. I've got one last embarrassing story, perhaps, that may continue to develop on that subject. But we have a bit of a blunder still ongoing with the Transport Minister, Phil Typhoid. Typhoid. Call him
Typhoid. Or typhus.
Yeah. He has earned that nickname over time. But they were supposed to build light rail from the airport to the city centre here in Auckland. And They were supposed to lay the first tracks, in the first term, and they haven't even got a document. They haven't even got a proposal going. Now, apparently somebody sent them a proposal, and he was saying that it was unsolicited. But clearly somebody told these companies to submit to submit a proposal, like now would be a good time to do this. And so there's huge turmoil here in his office there, because he needs to deliver this light rail. But thankfully, I think it's not going to happen, because it would be a really bad thing if it did happen. So it's all of these Labour policies where they're failing, and I'm really happy that they're failing. Like, I think they're doing a really good job in failing in a lot of the right areas. But yeah, it makes me wonder if if in the next couple of days we'll see somebody thrown under the bus for accidentally requesting a proposal there where they should not have.
Well, nobody's saying that about Sydney's light rail, which was initiated by the Liberal National State Government. It's been over budget, it's been over time. The contractor is suing the state government, and George Street, which is a major street in Sydney, which is going along, heaps of small businesses have been ruined. It's been a complete schmozzle, and so yes, that you don't want them to build the light rail, because just look at what happened in Sydney.
Yeah, and this road, they want to build it down. Dominion Road in Auckland, there's no room for light rail. It would ruin the street. That's why I don't think it's going to happen, because everyone's looking at this thing. What a disaster it's going to be. Have these Wellington Labour politicians never been here and actually look at the road that they want to build light rail on?
Yes, just tell them to look at Sydney's light rail experiment.
I'll pass that on next time I see them.
Yes. If you're taking your gun control cues from Australia, you should take your light rail cues from Australia as well.
Yes, there's one thing I can agree on, but not the first half of that statement, because we don't want to take any gun control cues from Australia. Thank you very much. But that's not going to stop these politicians ever. They like to refer to Australia when it suits them, and then when it doesn't suit them, they ignore Australia, of course.
Well, thankfully, web censorship has been wound back in Australia since it went into overdrive during post the Christchurch Mosque massacre. I'm told that Jacinta Ardern it's actually called a internet censorship body that they're wanting to beef that up. But now it's only 8 websites that are blocked by, or it's called, we already had a web censorship body. It's called the E-Safety Commissioner. There's just 8 websites that are blocked now, the Hateful Eight, and they have unblocked BitChute now, which is the free speech video hosting website. So it allows a lot of the people banned from YouTube for hate speech and community standards they don't have to use a VPN to access that site anymore. But you've still got that battle in New Zealand, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there have been no further policy developments so far that I am aware of. There is a lot of talk about commissions, commissioners, and reviews and so on. But thankfully they are. They haven't moved very quickly on that. And the further that we get away from the emotion, the more that people will look at that and say, nah, no, thank you very much to that. But it still is looming there. It is still something they're saying they're going to do in the next year. We just we'll wait and see.
Yes, it sounds like that cooler heads are back in New Zealand now.
Well, as cool as they can be with a Labour government, I think. And as I say every week now, almost, we're getting up to close to that election year. Winston Peters is ramping up his campaigning efforts.
Yes, he's a nationalist again.
Absolutely, that's right. So we may be in for a very exciting year. Who knows? We'll keep it positive. And I think we've clocked overtime as well, and we've pretty much exhausted our list of topics for tonight. So yeah. I hope everyone has enjoyed the show, and if there's anything else you'd like to say, go for it. Otherwise, I'll let you do your promotional segment.
Yeah, this is your last opportunity as well to send through Super Chat to support the show and the Unshackled. So if you're feeling generous, now's your time. I, of course, will be back tomorrow night on my own Tim Wilm's YouTube channel for another episode of Wilm's Front, 7 p.m. Melbourne time. My guest will be the local chapter leader of We Are Change. Do you know We Are Change? It's the global libertarian alternative news gathering source.
I have heard the name, but I didn't even know they were libertarians.
Oh, well, their leader, I can't pronounce his last name. He's a libertarian. So they mainly it's exposing the elites. That's mainly what they do. So the local chapter leader here has done a lot of work uncovering elite child sex rings, which of course 10 years ago were just a conspiracy theory. But of course, there's two names which have blown that theory into reality, which of course is Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So that'll be a good chat because the elites are everywhere. And then of course after that is D-Bell Trans weekly live stream at 8:15 p.m. Melbourne time on her channel. She's got Samuel Lee, a rogue Australian accountant who wants to abolish the income tax. And then, of course, on Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time, it's the Uncockables, the weekly alt media super show, which is on its dedicated channel. And of course, most weekday mornings, my colleague at the Unshackled Steel Archer has his Detonation program. If you want to support the work of the Unshackled on a more regular basis, you can take out a premium membership on the unshackled.net/membership or the unshackled.net/donate. We're also now on subscribestar.com/the Unshackled. And of course, there are ways to support Right Minds as well.
That's right. If you go to rightminds.nz/donate, you'll see all the details there. If I get around to writing anything, it'll be up on rightminds.nz and on the bfd.co.nz as well. I'm pretty busy at the moment. We're expecting another baby to be born in a couple of weeks, so we'll see how this show goes until then. But you likely won't see much activity from me outside of the show for the next couple of months.
If you're unable to make it, get one of your what is it? I call them your admins to come on.
My moderators. I'll see if we can get a guest host for the show if we need it. So if any Kiwis in the chat are still there, we're looking for a guest host maybe. It's all up in the air at the moment.
They're very good at tutting if we say something which is slightly factually incorrect. I heard that they were triggered that there's not a hyphen in between Trans-Tasman.
Yes, that's correct. Have you fixed that yet? No. I'm going to get more complaints about that now, Tim. I would like to see that fixed next week. Else they'll come after me again.
Oh yes. Oh dear. Anyway, that concludes the show for this week. Of course, this show is also available in podcast form. It's on my Wilmsfront podcast feed, so you can access that by going to timwilms.com, and that has the podcasting links on all your favorite podcasting platforms such as Apple and Spotify, so you can listen to us on the go, and of course listen to the live replay on the Unshackled or Right Minds channel.
Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Thank you. We will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Trans-Tasman Talk. To keep up with the latest real news and analysis from the Tasman nations, visit theunshackled.net and rightminds.nz.